Hello and welcome to the Okwe John Show, where we simplify faith and finance. So today I wanted to talk about something that I think every single one of us can relate to, and that is the topic of, should I lend family and friends money? Now let me tell you my story. A few years ago, quite some years ago actually, I was working on a project and I needed some money, some immediate cash, and I didn't have it readily available at the time. So I reached out to a really good friend at the time and I asked them to loan me the money. And she asked me what I needed it for. I explained to her. She asked me, when can I expect that you'd pay me back? And I said to them, I'll pay you back in a month. Fortunately for me, 2 weeks after loaning the money, I was able to repay her back the money. Happy days, relationship continued, no bad blood there. Now, I wish everybody's story was as blissful as that. Unfortunately, what you find is in the process of lending money to family and friends, you find it's destroyed some really good relationships along the way. Now, what's the reason why this keeps happening? From my observation, there are three key things I find keeps happening. The first thing is you find the borrower starts to avoid the person they've loaned money from, as though somehow by not communicating with them, they would somehow forget about the money that they've borrowed off them or something. Actually, this never happens. What happens in turn is it really does start to annoy the person that loaned them the money. The second thing I've observed happen is sometimes people miss payment date. If you know you can't make the date you've agreed to repay back the loan, the best thing to do as a matter of integrity is to actually have an open and honest conversation with the person to preserve relationship. You'd find 9 out of 10 times you're able to reach a compromise between both of you and you're able to reach an agreement. The third one that gets me the most is when the person that owns the money is asking for their money back and the borrower's acting as though they've done something really bad by asking for their money back. I guess, it's always important to remember that it is their money and they're well within their rights to ask. And of course, keeping the communication line going is very important. Now, let me just clarify from my own perspective, it's not a bad thing to actually loan money to friends and family. In fact, it's a blessing because sometimes we find ourselves in a temporary jam and we just need a quick bailout. It could be for any reason, And of course, the first people that we should be able to go to are our family and friends to quickly bail us out. And of course, it's a matter of integrity for us to pay them back on time or not make them chase us for their money back. Now, a few years ago, I remember having this conversation with an elderly person because I was badly stung at the time when I loaned a friend money and they didn't pay me back. This elderly man gave me some really sound advice at the time, and I think it's worth sharing. The first thing they said to me was, Okwe, remember one thing, you're not sent to help everybody, and you cannot help everybody. So before you lend somebody money, make sure you take your time, think about it properly, and ask God for direction because it is not everybody you can lend money to. The second advice he gave me is never lend money that you cannot afford to part with. So if somebody comes to you and asks you for £1,000, if all you can afford to part with is £100, lend them the £100. Just because it destroys the best of relationships, honestly. And also bearing in mind as well, sometimes, the person you've loaned money to, they're actually not bad people, but things beyond their control happens. For example, someone says to you, can you please lend me some money? I'll pay you back in 2 months' time when I get paid for my job. They could lose their job. Anything happens. And in that sort of situation, there's circumstances beyond their control. Unfortunately, they can't afford to repay you, but what can you really do? So that advice is really sound. Never lend out money that you cannot afford to part with. If you can afford to part with the £1,000, should things not work out, then by all means, lend that money out. The third advice they gave me is always ask what the money is for so you can assess the risk. Now, sometimes people want to lend money. Some people, you'll be shocked what people borrow money for. Sorry, I beg your pardon. You'll be surprised what people borrow money for. They could borrow money to buy a bag or to buy material things. It's up to you whether or not you want to lend your money to people to do that. But if someone's in a situation where they come to you and they say, I can't pay my house rent, please help me, I'm probably more likely to help you in that sort of situation, as opposed to saying, I need to buy this bag, I absolutely need it, it will look so nice in my outfit. They're two completely different conversations, aren't they? So assess the risk based on what they need the money for. Then you can always decide whether or not it's worth you actually lending them the money. Now, the fourth advice this elderly man gave me is, observe the character of the person asking you for a loan. If they're the kind of person who doesn't seem to manage their own personal finances well, chances are you might struggle to get your money back from them. If they're really bad at managing money, then it's probably a red flag for you. Now, as for the topic, should I lend family or friends money? There is no simple answer to it, because you know what? We should really be the first point of call for each other to support our friends and family in times of need. But one thing is clear, some people have really spoiled, some people have had really bad experiences along the way, and we cannot ignore it. So whilst you're there to help people, whatever you do, please make sure you protect and guard yourself. And remember, you're not sent to help everybody. If you haven't subscribed to this YouTube channel, please subscribe so you're one of the first people to know when the next video drops.